I sat in the small, fluorescent-lit office of the California Employment Development Department's Fraud Division, my hands folded neatly in my lap, and I had never felt more alive. "Miss Chen, thank you for coming in today," the investigator said, sliding a folder across the desk. "We have some questions about the unemployment benefits filed under your name and social security number between March 2019 and January 2020. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral even as satisfaction hummed through my veins like electricity. "Of course, I'm happy to help however I can." The investigator, a woman named Patricia Reeves with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen every con in the book, studied me carefully. "You reported suspicious activity on your account approximately 6 weeks ago. Can you walk me through what prompted that report?" 6 weeks ago, I had been reborn. Well, not literally, but close enough. I had woken up on the morning of March 15th, 2019, in my old apartment. The cramped one-bedroom in Riverside that I'd shared with my husband Marcus and his mother Diane. The moment my eyes opened, I knew something was wrong. The ceiling was different. The sounds were different. And when I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, the date confirmed what my racing heart already knew. March 15th, 2019. 5 years in the past. I had lived this day before. I had lived the next 2 years before. I remembered every humiliating moment, every manipulation, every betrayal. And I remembered exactly what Marcus and Diane had done to me. In my first life, this had been the day everything started to fall apart. I had been laid off from my job at the marketing firm 3 weeks earlier. The company had done a massive restructuring, and my entire department had been eliminated. I was devastated. I had loved that job, loved my coworkers, loved the work itself. Marcus had seemed sympathetic at first, holding me while I cried, assuring me we'd figure it out together. But then his mother had moved in. Diane had shown up at our door 2 days after I lost my job, 3 suitcases in tow, claiming that her landlord was doing emergency repairs on her building, and she needed a place to stay just for a few weeks. Those few weeks had turned into months. She had taken over our living room, our kitchen, our lives, and she had immediately started working on Marcus, poisoning him against me with her constant commentary. She's not even looking for work," I had overheard her whisper to Marcus one night. "She's just sitting around all day using this as an excuse to be lazy." That wasn't true. I had been applying to dozens of jobs every week, going on interviews, networking desperately, but Diane didn't care about the truth. She cared about driving a wedge between Marcus and me, and it was working. By the time I filed for unemployment benefits in late March of that first life, I was already broken down, already doubting myself. Marcus had started coming home later and later. Diane had started making little comments about how I was draining Marcus financially, how I was taking advantage of him. I had felt like a burden, like a failure. So when Marcus sat me down one evening in early April 8th to be exact, no, I would never forget the date, and told me that he needed me to do something for him, I had been so desperate to prove that I wasn't useless that I had agreed without thinking. "Baby, my mom's in a really tough spot," he had said, taking my hands in his. He had looked so sincere, so concerned. "You know she's been having trouble finding work since she retired from her last position. She's too proud to file for unemployment herself, but she really needs the help. And since you're already getting benefits, what are you asking me to do?" I had asked, though some part of me already knew. "Just sign a few papers," he had said smoothly. "We'll set it up so the payments go into a joint account that we can all access. That way my mom can get what she needs, and we can make sure all the bills are covered. It's not really fraud. You're still the one who's unemployed. We're just sharing the resources as a family. That's what families do, right?" I should have said no. I should have seen it for the manipulation it was. But I had been so worn down, so desperate to keep my marriage together, that I had signed everything he put in front of me. Over the next 9 months, Marcus and Diane had systematically drained my unemployment benefits. The money that was supposed to keep me afloat while I searched for work, the money that was supposed to pay for my groceries, and my portion of the rent and my phone bill, all of it had disappeared into their pockets. Diane had used it to fund her shopping addiction, buying designer handbags and expensive skincare products. Marcus had used it to take his coworker Rebecca out to fancy dinners and weekend getaways. I had discovered the affair in November of that first life, when Rebecca had posted a photo of them together at a Napa Valley resort, tagged #blessed #mylovemelife. The room had been booked under Marcus's credit card, the one he claimed was maxed out whenever I asked for money for groceries. By January 2020, I had found a new job, but the damage was done. I was broke, emotionally shattered, and trapped in a marriage with a man who had stolen from me and cheated on me, living with a mother-in-law who had orchestrated the whole thing. I had filed for divorce in February 2020. Marcus had fought me every step of the way, claiming I owed him money for supporting me during my unemployment. The legal battle had dragged on for over a year. I had never recovered financially. The knowledge that I had been defrauded, is that my own husband and mother-in-law had stolen government benefits intended for me, had eaten away at me, but I had never reported it. I had been too ashamed, too afraid that I would be blamed for signing those papers. I had spent the next 3 years rebuilding my life, piece by piece, getting therapy, advancing in my career, learning to trust myself again. And then, on March 15th, 2024, I had gone to bed exhausted after a long week of work. When I woke up, it was March 15th, 2019. The same apartment, the same husband sleeping next to me, the same monster-in-law in my living room. And this time, I knew exactly what was coming. That first morning of my second life, I had lain in bed for a long time, just breathing, testing my memories. They were all there, every moment from 2019 to 2024. Crystal clear. I remember dates, conversations, specific details. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't wishful thinking. I had been given a second chance, and I was going to use it to destroy them. I went through the motions of that first day exactly as I had before. I got up, made coffee, exchanged terse pleasantries with Diane, who was already camped out on my couch watching morning talk shows. When Marcus woke up, I kissed him good morning just like I had the first time, even though the touch of his lips made my skin crawl now. I knew I had to be patient. I had to wait for them to make their move, and this time, I had to be ready. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of hyper-awareness, documenting everything. I took photos of Diane's shopping bags when she came home from her errands. I screenshotted every text message. I backed up every email to a cloud storage account that Marcus didn't know about. When my unemployment benefits were approved and the EDD sent me the paperwork, I made copies of everything before Marcus could get his hands on them. April 8th arrived right on schedule. Marcus came home from work with that same concerned expression, and my stomach twisted with fury and anticipation as he asked me to sit down so we could talk. "Baby, my mom's in a really tough spot," he started, and I had to dig my nails into my palms to keep from laughing in his face. I let him give me the whole speech. I asked the same questions I had asked the first time. I even let my voice shake a little, like I was uncertain, like I was afraid of disappointing him. "I don't know, Marcus," I said slowly. "Isn't that fraud? I could get in trouble." No. Nothing like that," he assured me, exactly as he had before. "You're the one who's unemployed. The benefits are in your name. We're just managing them as a family. There's nothing illegal about that." Every word was a lie, and we both knew it. Though he didn't know that I knew. "Okay," I said finally, letting relief flood his face. "If you really think it'll help." "You're amazing, baby," he said, pulling me into a hug. "This is just temporary until my mom gets back on her feet." Over the next 3 days, Marcus brought me papers to sign. Authorization forms to add him to my unemployment account, forms to redirect my benefit payments to a different account. Each time I signed with a trembling hand, playing the part of the desperate, eager-to-please wife. But I photographed every single page before I handed it back. And then, I made my first call. I had spent hours researching during those 2 weeks, preparing for this moment. I knew exactly which agencies to contact, exactly what information they would need, and exactly how to present myself as a confused victim rather than a willing participant. My first call was to the EDD fraud hotline. "I need to report suspicious activity on my unemployment account," I told the representative, making my voice small and worried. "My husband asked me to sign some papers, and I did because I trusted him, but now I'm looking at them more carefully and I'm concerned that something isn't right." The representative took down my information and opened a case. They told me that an investigator would review the situation and contact me if they needed more information. My second call was to a lawyer, I had found her through an online search, a family law attorney named Jennifer Torres, who specialized in financial abuse cases. In our consultation, I laid out everything that was happening, everything that was about to happen. I showed her the photographs of the documents Marcus had given me. "This is textbook unemployment fraud," she said grimly. "If your husband and mother-in-law are diverting your benefits to themselves, that's a felony. You could be charged as an accessory if you knowingly participated." "I signed the papers because he told me it was legal," I said, which was true enough. I trusted him, but now I'm scared. "You need to protect yourself," Jennifer said. "Document everything. If they're going to commit fraud in your name, you need a paper trail that shows you tried to stop it." She helped me draft a formal letter to Marcus and Diane, stating that I was uncomfortable with the arrangement and wanted to revoke all the authorizations I had signed. I sent it via certified mail, so there would be proof they had received it. They ignored it, of course. The money started flowing into their joint account in late April. I watched it happen, tracking every payment through the online portal. $450 every week, deposited like clockwork. Money that should have been keeping me fed and housed while I looked for work. Instead, Diane bought a new Michael Kors handbag, $380, and a set of Dior skincare products, $520. Marcus took Rebecca to a concert, $300 for tickets and dinner. I documented all of it. Credit card statements that Marcus left lying around, Instagram posts Rebecca made showing off the flowers Marcus sent her, receipts Diane carelessly tossed in the trash. I was building a case piece by piece. In May, I sent a second letter, this one more urgent. I've reviewed my unemployment account and noticed that the payments are not being deposited into my personal account as they should be. I need this corrected immediately. I did not authorize anyone to divert these funds. Again, certified mail. Again, ignored. In June, I sent a third letter, this time explicitly stating that I believed fraud was being committed in my name and that I would be reporting it to the authorities if the situation was not immediately corrected. Marcus finally acknowledged this one. He came home angry, waving the letter in my face. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting myself," I said calmly. "What you're doing is illegal, Marcus. If you get caught, I could go to jail too." "Nobody's going to jail," he snapped. "Stop being paranoid. This is just temporary, remember? Just until my mom gets a job." "She's not looking for a job," I shot back. "She's buying designer handbags with my unemployment money." "Our money," he corrected. "We're married. It's community property." "Unemployment benefits aren't community property," I said. "They're specifically designated for the person who lost their job. You know that? Your mother knows that. And you're both committing fraud." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. He was trying to decide if I was really a threat or if he could bully me back into submission. "Do you sign those papers?" he said finally. "If anyone's committing fraud, it's you. So I suggest you keep your mouth shut and stop making trouble, or you're going to be the one who ends up arrested." It took everything in me not to smile, because that was exactly what I needed him to say. I had recorded the entire conversation on my phone, which was sitting face down on the coffee table, camera pointed at Marcus. Video and audio, crystal clear. In my first life, I had caved under Marcus's threats. I had shut up, stopped complaining, and let them continue to steal from me for another 7 months. I had been terrified, isolated, convinced that I would be blamed for everything. This time, I knew better. The very next day, I went to the police station and filed a report. I brought copies of all the letters I had sent, printouts of the account statements showing where the money was going, photographs of Diane's shopping sprees, and the video of Marcus threatening me. The officer who took my report was sympathetic but cautious. "This is really a matter for the EDD fraud division," she told me. "We can document your report, but they're the ones who handle unemployment fraud investigations." "I already reported it to the EDD hotline," I said. "I just wanted to make sure there was a police report on file as well, in case I need it later." She nodded and took down all my information. Case number BR2 1908-473. I committed it to memory. By July, I had found a new job, the same one I had gotten in my first life, actually, at a tech startup in Irvine. I accepted the offer and reported my new employment to the EDD as required. My unemployment benefits stopped, but Marcus and Diane's fraud didn't. I discovered it by accident, or at least that's how I would tell the story later. In reality, I had been monitoring Marcus's email account. His password was still Marcus1985 because he was spectacularly uncreative, and I saw the confirmation. They had continued to certify my unemployment claims even after I had returned to work. For 5 more months, they collected payments in my name, forging my signature on the certification forms, claiming that I was still unemployed and actively seeking work. They collected over $9,000 in fraudulent payments between July and November, and I documented every single one. I kept copies of my employment records, proving I was working full-time. I kept copies of the forged certifications, showing that the signature wasn't mine. I kept screenshots of texts between Marcus and Diane, discussing how to handle the EDD paperwork now that I was being difficult. In November, when I discovered the affair in this timeline, just as I had in the first one, Rebecca was nothing if not predictable with her Instagram habits. I filed for divorce. Marcus was shocked. "Baby, wait," he pleaded. "We can work through this. Don't throw away our marriage over one mistake." "One mistake?" I repeated. "You've been cheating on me for months. You've been stealing my unemployment benefits. You've been gaslighting me and manipulating me and committing fraud in my name. Which one mistake are you referring to?" "I haven't been stealing," he protested. "That was our agreement, remember?" I signed papers in April," I interrupted. "I revoked that authorization in May in writing via certified mail. You ignored me. Then I went back to work in July, and you and your mother kept collecting benefits in my name for 5 more months. That's fraud, Marcus. That's a felony." He went pale. "You can't prove that." "Yes," I said quietly. "I can." I filed for divorce the next day. I also submitted a comprehensive report to the EDD Fraud Division, including every piece of evidence I had collected over the past 8 months. And then I waited. The investigation took time. I had known it would. The EDD was notoriously slow, perpetually understaffed, drowning in cases. But I had been thorough, and my evidence was airtight. In January 2020, I received a letter requesting an interview with an investigator. I went in, told my story, and provided additional documentation. The investigator, Patricia Reeves, was impressed by how organized I was. "Most victims don't have this level of documentation," she told me. "It's going to make the case much stronger." I kept records because I was scared, I said, which was true in its own way. My husband told me I'd be the one to get in trouble if I reported it. I wanted to be able to prove I tried to stop it. Patricia nodded. "You did the right thing. And for what it's worth, based on what you've shown me, you're clearly a victim here, not a perpetrator. We'll make sure that's clear in our findings." By March 2020, the EDD had completed its investigation and referred the case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. By June 2020, Marcus and Diane were both charged with unemployment fraud, forgery, and grand theft. And in August 2020, I received a subpoena to testify as a witness at their preliminary hearing, which brought me to now. To this moment, to Patricia Reeves's office, going over my testimony one final time before the hearing. "I need to prepare you for what's going to happen in there," Patricia said gently. "Your husband's attorney is going to try to make it seem like you were a willing participant. They're going to point to those initial authorization forms you signed and claim that you knew exactly what was happening." "I understand," I said, "but I have the letters I sent revoking that authorization. I have the video of Marcus threatening me. I have proof that I reported my return to work, and they continued claiming benefits anyway. The timeline tells the story." Patricia smiled. "Yes, it does. You've been an exemplary witness, Miss Chen. Honestly, this is one of the clearest fraud cases I've seen. Most of the time, these situations are muddier. It's hard to tell who knew what, who was really responsible, but you made sure there was no ambiguity. Because I had lived it once before, because I had known exactly what they were going to do, and I had documented every step." "There's one more thing," Patricia said, pulling out another folder. "We've calculated the total amount of fraudulent benefits collected. Between the payments they diverted while you were unemployed and the payments they collected after you returned to work, the total is $18,650. They're going to be required to pay that back plus penalties and interest. And given the amount and the duration of the fraud, they're both likely facing jail time." Jail time, the words sang through me like music. How much jail time? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Unemployment fraud of this magnitude is a felony, with the aggravating factors, the forgery, the continued fraud after you'd reported your employment, the fact that there were two defendants working together. They're each looking at anywhere from 16 months to 3 years in state prison. Plus fines, plus restitution. I nodded slowly, processing. 3 years. 3 years of Marcus and Diane facing the consequences of what they had done to me. It was more than I had dared to hope for. What about the divorce? I asked. How will this affect that? Patricia hesitated. I can't give you legal advice on family law matters, but I can tell you that criminal convictions for fraud tend to influence how judges view property division and spousal support claims. If your husband is convicted of stealing from you, it's unlikely a judge will look favorably on his requests for support or assets. I had already known that, of course. Jennifer Torres had explained it to me in detail, but hearing it confirmed by the fraud investigator made it real in a new way. Marcus was going to lose everything: his freedom, his reputation, his claim to any of my earnings or assets. And when he got out of prison, he would have a felony record that would follow him for the rest of his life, all because he had been too greedy and too arrogant to believe I would ever fight back. The preliminary hearing was held on a gray morning in late August. I arrived early, dressed in a simple navy suit, my hair pulled back, my face solemn. I looked like exactly what I was: a victim. A woman who had trusted the wrong people and paid the price. Jennifer Torres met me outside the courtroom. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready?" I confirmed. Inside, Marcus and Diane sat at the defense table with their attorneys. Marcus looked thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, his suit rumpled. Diane looked furious, her mouth pressed into a tight line, her hands clutching her handbag like a lifeline. They both stared at me as I walked to the witness stand. I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes on the prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Amanda Chen, no relation, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Miss Chen, thank you for being here today," Amanda began after I was sworn in. "So can you tell the court about your relationship to the defendants?" "Marcus Chen is my husband," I said clearly. "We've been married for 4 years. Diane Chen is his mother. She moved in with us in March of 2019. "And can you tell the court what happened in April of 2019? I took a breath and began to tell the story. How I had lost my job, how I had filed for unemployment, how Marcus had convinced me to sign papers allowing him to access my benefits, how I had sent letters trying to revoke that authorization, how I had reported my return to work, and they had continued to collect benefits in my name. I spoke for nearly an hour, walking through the timeline, identifying documents, explaining each piece of evidence. The prosecutor was thorough, making sure every detail was on the record. Then Marcus's attorney stood up for cross-examination. He was exactly the type I had expected. Expensive suit, practiced smile, a patronizing tone that made my skin crawl. "Miss Chen," he began, "you testified that you signed authorization forms in April of 2019, correct?" "Yes." "And at the time you signed those forms, you understood what you were signing?" "I understood that I was signing papers," I said carefully, "but my husband told me that it was legal, that it was just sharing resources as a family. I trusted him. But you knew that the unemployment benefits were being deposited into an account that both your husband and mother-in-law could access?" "Yes, that's what I was told the purpose of the forms was." "So you willingly gave them access to your benefits?" "Under false pretenses," I countered. My husband told me it was legal. When I later discovered that it might not be, I sent multiple letters trying to revoke that authorization. They ignored those letters and continued to collect benefits in my name. The attorney's smile tightened. "You sent letters, but you remained living in the same home with your husband and mother-in-law, correct? You continued to benefit from the household income?" "I paid my own rent from my new job starting in July," I said. "I have bank records showing that I contributed my share of household expenses. The unemployment benefits that were collected after I returned to work went entirely to Marcus and Diane. I never saw a penny of that money." "But you must have known they were continuing to claim benefits?" "No," I interrupted. "I had reported my return to work to the EDD as required. I assumed that the benefits had stopped, as they should have. I didn't know that Marcus and Diane were forging my signature on certification forms until months later, when I checked my account. As soon as I discovered it, I reported it to the authorities. The attorney tried a few more angles, but I had been prepared for all of them. Every question he asked, I had an answer backed by documentation. Every attempt to paint me as a co-conspirator ran into the wall of evidence showing that I had actively tried to stop the fraud. Finally, he sat down looking frustrated. Diane's attorney didn't even cross-examine me. What could she say? Diane had no relationship to me except through Marcus. She had no claim to my benefits. Her involvement was even more clearly fraudulent than his. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I finally allowed myself to look at Marcus. He was staring at me with an expression of betrayed shock, as if I had been the one who had wronged him, as if I was the villain in this story. I met his eyes and smiled, just a small smile, just enough to let him know that I had planned this, that I had known every move he was going to make, that I had beaten him at his own game. The confusion on his face was beautiful. The judge found probable cause to proceed to trial. Marcus and Diane were both held over on all charges. Their attorneys tried to negotiate plea deals, but the DA's office was uninterested in being lenient. The evidence was too strong, the fraud too blatant. Amanda Chen told me they were going to push for maximum sentences. They stole from you, they stole from the state, and they showed absolutely no remorse, she said. We're going to make an example of them. The trial was set for November 2020. In the meantime, my divorce proceeded. Jennifer Torres was ruthless. She submitted all the evidence of Marcus's fraud to the family court. Along with evidence of his affair, she argued that Marcus had not only breached his fiduciary duty to me as a spouse, but had actively stolen from me and endangered me legally. The judge was not sympathetic to Marcus's requests for spousal support or property division. Mr. Chen, you stand accused of defrauding your wife out of thousands of dollars in government benefits, the judge said dryly during one hearing. I'm not inclined to reward that behavior by granting you access to her earnings or assets. So your requests are denied. Marcus's attorney sputtered about fairness and community property, but it was hopeless. By the time the divorce was finalized in October 2020, I had kept everything: my car, my savings, my retirement accounts. Marcus got nothing except his legal bills and his impending criminal trial. Diane had already been evicted from my apartment. She was living in a motel, burning through her savings paying for her attorney. She had tried to contact me several times, leaving voicemails that veered between tearful apologies and venomous accusations. I never called her back. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: the forged certifications, the bank records showing where the money went, my letters revoking authorization, the video of Marcus threatening me, testimony from EDD investigators, testimony from me. The defense tried to argue that it had all been a misunderstanding, that Marcus and Diane had believed they were entitled to manage my benefits as family members, that there had been no criminal intent. But the jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. I was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I watched Marcus's face crumple, watched Diane start to cry. Their attorneys immediately began talking about appeals, but I knew it was over. Sentencing was scheduled for December. At the sentencing hearing, I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I stood in front of the judge and told her what Marcus and Diane had done to me. Not just the fraud, but the emotional abuse, the gaslighting. The way they had made me feel worthless and dependent while they stole from me. They didn't just steal money, I said, my voice steady. They stole my security, my peace of mind, my ability to trust. They put me at risk of criminal prosecution for crimes I didn't commit. They did all of this while pretending to love me, while pretending to be my family. And when I tried to stop them, they threatened me and told me I would be the one to go to jail. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the courtroom. I'm grateful that the truth came out, I continued. I'm grateful that the system worked and that they're being held accountable. But I will never get back the time I lost, the stress I endured, the damage they did to my mental health. I will never be able to fully trust people the way I did before. That's what they took from me, and I hope the court takes that into account when deciding their sentence. The judge thanked me and asked if Marcus or Diane wanted to make statements. Diane stood up, tears streaming down her face, and gave a rambling speech about how she was sorry, how she had made a mistake, how how she had just been trying to help her son. Marcus declined to speak. The judge sentenced them each to 2 years in state prison, plus restitution of $18,650, plus fines and penalties totaling another $25,000. They were both remanded into custody immediately. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high, and I didn't look back. 2 years. It wasn't everything I had wanted. Part of me had hoped for the full 3-year maximum. But it was enough. It was justice. In my first life, I had spent years rebuilding from the damage Marcus and Diane had done. I had struggled financially, emotionally, psychologically. I had blamed myself for being so stupid, so trusting, so weak. In this life, I had turned the tables. I had used my knowledge of what they were going to do, and I had documented everything. I had built an airtight case. I had protected myself and ensured that they faced real consequences for their actions. And in the process, I had learned something important. I was not weak. I had never been weak. I had been trusting, yes. I had been kind. I had been willing to believe the best of the people I loved. Those weren't weaknesses. Those were strengths that Marcus and Diane had exploited. But now I knew better. Now I knew exactly what people like them were capable of. And I would never be caught off guard again. Life moved forward. I threw myself into my new job and excelled. Within 6 months, I was promoted. Within a year, I was managing my own team. The startup went through a successful round of funding, and my stock options suddenly became valuable. I moved to a beautiful apartment in Costa Mesa, all my own, with a balcony overlooking the ocean. I adopted a rescue dog, a sweet pit bull mix named Luna, who became my constant companion. I went to therapy and worked through the trauma of both timelines, the original betrayal and the calculated revenge. My therapist helped me understand that what I had done wasn't cruel. It was self-defense. I had protected myself from people who had already proven they would hurt me. I started dating again, carefully, taking my time. I was upfront with potential partners about what I'd been through, and I paid close attention to red flags. I wasn't going to settle for less than I deserved ever again. And sometimes, late at night, I would think about Marcus and Diane in their prison cells, and I would smile. I would think about Marcus realizing that the wife he'd thought was weak and stupid had outsmarted him completely. I would think about Diane losing her freedom, her reputation, her future because she'd been too greedy to leave my benefits alone. I would think about how they must have gone over it in their minds, trying to figure out when I had turned on them, how I had known what they were planning, why I had been so perfectly prepared. They would never know the truth. They would never know that I had lived through their betrayal once before and come back armed with the knowledge of exactly how to destroy them. And that was fine with me. Some secrets were worth keeping. The California EDD fraud. Division closed my case in January 2021 with a formal letter commending me for my cooperation and stating that I was officially cleared of any wrongdoing. The $18,650 in restitution that Marcus and Diane owed was set up as a payment plan that would follow them for years after their release from prison, garnishing their wages and bank accounts until every penny was repaid, plus interest. I received a check from the EDD for the full amount within weeks. It wasn't about the money. Not really. I had rebuilt my finances and was doing well, but there was something symbolically perfect about getting that money back, knowing that Marcus and Diane would be paying for their crime for years to come. In March 2021, I got a letter from Marcus. It had been forwarded from my old address, postmarked from the California State Prison in Chino. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten in Marcus's familiar scrawl. He started with apologies, elaborate, flowery apologies that rang hollow. He talked about how he had made mistakes, how he had been influenced by his mother, how he had never meant to hurt me. Then, in the second page, the real purpose of the letter became clear. He wanted me to help him. He wanted me to write a letter to the parole board supporting his early release. He wanted me to tell them that I forgave him, that he had shown remorse, that he deserved a second chance. "You were always so kind, so understanding," he wrote. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I've had a lot of time to think in here, and I realize now how much I took you for granted. If you could find it in your heart to help me, I would be eternally grateful. I want to make things right, but I can't do that if I'm stuck in here for the full 2 years. I read the letter twice, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Then I laughed. I laughed until tears ran down my face, until Luna came over and nuzzled my hand in concern, until my stomach hurt. Marcus still didn't get it. After everything, after the trial and the conviction and the sentencing, he still thought he could manipulate me. He still thought I was that same kind, understanding woman who would put his needs above my own. He had no idea who I had become. I took out a piece of my nice stationery, heavy cream paper with my name embossed at the top, and wrote a response. It was short. Marcus, I received your letter. The answer is no. You and your mother committed fraud in my name, stole from me, gaslit me, and threatened me when I tried to stop you. You betrayed every vow you made to me as my husband. You put me at risk of criminal prosecution for your crimes. I do not forgive you. I will not help you. You are receiving exactly the consequences you deserve, and I hope you serve every single day of your sentence thinking about what you did. Do not contact me again. I'm Alice Chen. I mailed it the next day, certified with return receipt. Just like old times, Marcus never wrote again. Diane got out first. In March 2022, after serving 18 months with credit for good behavior. I only knew because she showed up at my office. Security called me from the lobby. Miss Chen, there's a woman here asking to see you. She says she's your former mother-in-law, Diane Chen. My blood went cold, then hot. Tell her I'm not available, I said, and if she comes back, call the police. I have a restraining order. I didn't, actually, but I would get one if necessary. Understood, Miss Chen. I watched from my office window as security escorted Diane out of the building. She looked older, grayer, diminished. The designer handbags were gone. She was wearing a cheap windbreaker and carrying a plastic shopping bag as a purse. Prison had not been kind to her. Good. She tried twice more over the next few weeks, once waiting outside my apartment building, once following me from a coffee shop. Each time I documented it with photos and videos. Each time I reminded her that if she didn't leave me alone, I would file for a restraining order, and she would end up back in prison for violating it. After the third incident, I made good on the threat. I filed for a restraining order, submitted all my evidence, and got a 3-year order approved. Diane finally got the message. Marcus was released in December 2022. I didn't hear from him directly, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was struggling, and no one would hire him with a felony fraud conviction on his record. He was living with a friend, working under the table doing construction work, barely scraping by. Rebecca had left him, of course. She had stopped posting photos of them together the moment he was arrested, and by the time he went to trial, she had a new boyfriend, a doctor, according to her Instagram. She never visited him in prison, never wrote, never acknowledged that she'd been complicit in his betrayal of me. I could have exposed her, could have dragged her into the mess, but I decided she wasn't worth the energy. She would have her own karma to deal with eventually. Marcus sent me one final communication in January 2023, an email from a new account I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "I'm sorry." I deleted it without reading it. I had nothing more to say to Marcus Chen. By 2024, I was thriving. I had been promoted to director of marketing at the startup, which had successfully gone public. My stock options had made me genuinely wealthy. Not billionaire wealthy, but comfortable enough that I never had to worry about money again. I had a beautiful home, a job I loved, friends who valued me, and a life that was entirely my own. I had also met someone. His name was Daniel, and he was a software engineer at a different company. We had met at a professional networking event, struck up a conversation about the challenges of marketing tech products, and ended up talking for 3 hours. He had asked for my number. I had given it to him cautiously. Our first date was coffee. Our second date was dinner. By the third date, I knew this was something different. Daniel was kind without being a pushover. He was successful without being arrogant. He respected my boundaries, listened when I talked, and never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with. When I told him about Marcus and Diane, a carefully edited version that left out the time travel but included the fraud and the trial, he listened without judgment. "That must have been terrifying," he said quietly. "Having the people you trusted most betray you like that." "It was," I agreed, "but it also taught me a lot about myself." I'm stronger than I thought I was." "You're amazing," Daniel said, taking my hand. "And I promise you, I will never give you a reason to doubt me." He kept that promise. We got engaged in June 2024 on the balcony of my apartment overlooking the ocean, with Luna as our witness. The wedding was planned for March 2025, and on March 15th, 2024, exactly 5 years after I had woken up in my old apartment and discovered I had been given a second chance, I stood on that same balcony and looked out at the sunset, thinking about how far I had come. 2 lives, 2 timelines, 2 versions of myself. In the first life, I had been a victim. I had been broken by Marcus and Diane's betrayal, and it had taken me years to rebuild. In the second life, I had been a survivor. I had used my knowledge to protect myself, to fight back, to ensure that the people who hurt me faced real consequences. And now, standing here in 2024, I was something else entirely. I was free. I was happy. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Luna nudged my hand, and I scratched behind her ears absently, smiling as I watched the sun sink into the Pacific. Somewhere out there, Marcus and Diane were living with the consequences of their choices. Their criminal records would follow them forever. Their reputations were destroyed. They had lost years of their lives to prison, and they would spend years more paying back the money they had stolen. And I had lost nothing. I had gained everything. That was the real revenge, I realized. Not the trial or the conviction or the prison sentences, though those had been satisfying. The real revenge was this: living well, living freely, building a life so full and beautiful that what Marcus and Diane had tried to take from me seemed insignificant in comparison. They had tried to break me, and instead, they had made me stronger. They had tried to steal my future, and instead, I had stolen theirs. And every day I spent happy and successful was a reminder that they had failed. The wedding in March 2025 was everything I had dreamed of. Small and intimate, just our closest friends and family, held at a beachside venue in Laguna Beach. Daniel looked impossibly handsome in his suit, and I wore a dress that made me feel like a princess. Luna was our flower girl, wearing a tiny tulle collar and wagging her tail so hard during the ceremony that she almost knocked over the Unity candle. Jennifer Torres came to the wedding, and so did Patricia Reeves from the EDD Fraud Division. They had both been more than professional contacts. They had been allies, warriors fighting alongside me in my battle for justice. It felt right to have them there as I started this new chapter. During the reception, Patricia pulled me aside. "I have something to tell you," she said, smiling. "I've been doing this job for 23 years, and I've seen thousands of fraud cases. But yours is the one I'll always remember." "Because it was so clear-cut?" I asked. "No," she said, "because you were so prepared. Most victims come to us in pieces. They're confused, scared, they don't have documentation. They blame themselves. You came to us with a roadmap. You had thought through every angle, anticipated every question, you knew exactly what evidence we would need, and you provided it. I've never seen anything like it." If only she knew. "I just wanted to protect myself," I said, which was true. "You did more than that," Patricia said. "You made sure that 2 predators faced justice. You made sure they couldn't do this to someone else. And you showed other victims that it's possible to fight back and win. That's powerful." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I said softly, "for believing me, for fighting for me." "Always," Patricia said, and hugged me. Daniel and I honeymooned in Italy. 2 weeks of pasta and wine and art and wandering through ancient streets hand in hand. It was magical. It was perfect. And it was mine. All mine. My life, my choices, my happiness. No one could take it from me this time. When we got back, we moved into a new house together. A beautiful Spanish-style home in San Juan Capistrano, with a yard for Luna and an office where I could work from home when I needed to. Daniel had insisted on putting the house in my name only. "I never want you to feel trapped," he had said. "So I never want you to feel like you can't leave if you need to. This is yours, and it will always be yours." I had cried when he said that, and then I had amended the deed to put both our names on it. "We're partners," I told him. "Equal partners. I trust you." And I did. Completely. I thought about Marcus and Diane less and less as time went on. They became like characters in a story I had once read, rather than real people who had once consumed my entire world. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus had eventually found work at a warehouse and was living in a studio apartment in Riverside. Diane had moved to Arizona to live with her sister, unable to find work in California with her criminal record. They were strangers to me now, ghosts from a life I had left behind. Sometimes, when I was feeling philosophical, I wondered if the universe had given me that second chance for a reason. Had I been meant to stop Marcus and Diane? Had there been some cosmic purpose to my rebirth? Or had it just been a gift? A random, miraculous gift that I'd been lucky enough to receive? I would never know for sure. But what I did know was this. I had been given an opportunity that most people would never get. A chance to go back, knowing what I knew and make different choices. And I had used that opportunity not just for revenge, but for justice. I had protected myself. I had held my abusers accountable. I had reclaimed my life. And in doing so, I had become the person I was always meant to be. 5 years after my rebirth, on March 15th, 2029, I woke up in my beautiful home next to my husband, and I took a moment to feel grateful. Grateful for the second chance I had been given. Grateful for the strength I had found within myself. Grateful for the life I had built from the ashes of my old one. Daniel stirred beside me, reaching for my hand even in sleep, and I smiled. I had won. Not just against Marcus and Diane, not just in the courtroom or the fraud investigation. I had won at life. And that was the sweetest victory of all. Epilogue. In 2030, I got a message request on LinkedIn from a name I didn't recognize. Sarah Mitchell. The profile picture showed a young woman, maybe late 20s, with tired eyes and a hesitant smile. The message was short. "Hi, Alice. I know this is out of the blue, but I heard about your case against your ex-husband and mother-in-law for unemployment fraud. I'm going through something similar right now with my boyfriend, and I don't know what to do. Would you be willing to talk? I just need advice from someone who's been through this." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a reply. "Sarah, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Yes, I'm willing to talk. Here's my phone number. Call me anytime." She called that evening, and I spent 2 hours walking her through everything. How to document the fraud, how to protect herself legally, how to report it to the right agencies, how to be strong when everyone around her was telling her to let it go. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I've been so scared. Everyone keeps telling me I should just break up with him quietly and move on, but he's stealing from me. He's committing crimes in my name. I can't just let that go." "You don't have to," I said firmly. "You have every right to protect yourself and to hold him accountable. What he's doing is wrong, and you deserve justice." After we hung up, I thought about Patricia Reeves's words at my wedding. "You showed other victims that it's possible to fight back and win." Maybe that was the real purpose of my second chance. Not just to save myself, but to be able to save others. I started getting more messages after that. Women who had heard about my case, who were dealing with financial abuse or fraud or manipulation by partners or family members. Each time I responded. Each time I shared what I had learned. In 2031, I started a nonprofit organization called Second Chance Legal Aid, offering free consultations and resources to victims of financial fraud and abuse. We helped people document their cases, connected them with attorneys, and provided support through the legal process. Jennifer Torres joined our board of directors. Patricia Reeves volunteered as a consultant. We helped hundreds of people in our first year alone. And every time someone sent me a message saying, "Thank you, you changed my life." I thought about that morning I had woken up on March 15th, 2019, with the knowledge of what was coming and the chance to change it. I had thought my rebirth was about revenge, but it was about so much more than that. It was about transformation. About taking the worst thing that had ever happened to me and turning it into something that could help others. Marcus and Diane had tried to destroy me. Instead, they had forged me into someone stronger. Someone who could fight not just for herself, but for others who couldn't fight for themselves. That was the ultimate victory. That was the real revenge. And every day, I lived it.